In 2024, I read 26 books, which is probably more books than I read in my entire life in one single year. I ranked them on a tier list, and this video somehow got like 500,000 views and turned me into a booktuber. So random. So we're doing it again. In 2025, I read 33 books. And in this video, I'm gonna rank them all on a tier list, as well as give you a spoiler-free summary of each book and my personal opinions about them. And even if I rank something low on the tier list, just keep an eye on the stars. Something that is an S or A tier doesn't mean it's bad, and it doesn't mean that you won't enjoy them. This is all just my pea-brained opinion at this specific point in time.
Oh crap.
Oh! Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. B tier. Two childhood friends who meet in the hospital as kids reunite in college to create a video game that catapults them into fame. These characters have a work-life balance if the word life was also work. Work-work balance, more like. So this is a modern day or contemporary fiction, and it started pretty slow for your boy, not gonna lie. It's just a character-driven modern day story. And I just low-key didn't like either of the characters. They stunk. They stunk on ice. But I just kept kind of pushing through, and eventually I was enthralled. I don't know if it's just because I got halfway through and it was like Stockholm Syndrome with it, but I was strapped in and ready for the ride. The messy, dysfunctional relationship felt real. It was really frustrating to read them at times, and I wasn't really rooting for either of the main characters because they're both pretty bad friends and selfish, although they both have their fair share of trauma and you know, it plays into things. But overall, it was just interesting to watch the story as a whole develop over the course of 30 years. Watch their video game company grow or not grow. And even though this is a book centered around video games and work, it's a book about ambition and friendship, and it contained a few twists that I did not see coming. I got 20/20 vision. At certain points, this book kept me on my toes like I was taking a picture with my tall friends. The Wood at Midwinter by Susanna Clarke. E tier. A young lady magically communicates with whimsical animals and trees in a forest. And that's pretty much it. It hurts my soul to put this in E tier because this book is by the same author who wrote Piranesi, the book that spurred me into reading last year. Maybe the reason that I'm literally talking to you today. And so I wanted to read something else by Susanna Clarke, but she doesn't really publish many books due to a chronic illness she has. So it's kind of slim pickings if you want to read some more Clarke. But the issue is her other popular work is an absolute unit, and I'm scared of it, frankly, so I chose this. I mean, this is about the polar opposite. But yeah, this is essentially a kid's book for adults. Not even kidding. It's like has pictures and 10 words on a page sometimes. Almost like a Dr. Seuss book, except without all the fun rhymes. There's not one reference of discolored eggs or a cured pork leg. I just feel like there wasn't much meat on the bone here. Pun absolutely intended. I don't know if you heard that ham reference I just said. So the reason it's E tier is it was just kind of a waste of money, considering it took me probably less than 20 minutes to read. There's only so much you can do in 50 pages. And this book is more of like capturing a feeling than actually telling some sort of compact story. Just not for me. Susanna Clarke, though, still absolutely have respect for you. Mistborn, Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, B tier. For 1,000 years, the Lord Ruler has ruled, keeping the world in endless oppression. The sky is covered in ash. The land is barren. The noblemen party at balls, and the lower class is forced into brutal servitude. But a rebellion emerges, led by a charismatic leader who can harness magical powers by guzzling down metals like they're Mountain Dew Red. And this bro teams up with an apprentice and a motley crew with various magical abilities. Okay, so that's actually the spoiler-free summary of the first book, Mistborn, The Final Empire, which I read at the very end of 2024. If you're someone who's wanting to start reading fantasy, Mistborn, this series is a great place to start. It has solid characters, an excellent plot, super cool magic and world building, and one of the most satisfying endings you can imagine in a 3-book trilogy. I don't know what other kind of trilogies there are, but one of the best in the 3-book trilogies for sure. This book is S tier, and it could probably stand on its own. You could just read this and be done. But old Philly had an unquenchable thirst for more Mistborn, so I kept chugging like I was drinking Tang and 2001. So book 2, Well of Ascension, is a lot more politicking, and that's kind of why it fell to B tier for me. It's just a lot of strategy and a lot of build up, where this has a lot more things kind of going on. This is a lot of potential energy. This is kinetic energy. So this was slower for sure up until the last 150 pages. They call that a Sanderlanche because it's this build up to this avalanche of things, and the author's name's Sanderson. So Sander avalanche. So yeah, the last 150 pages go sicko mode. But the fact that it's 400 pages of buildup is, again, why I dropped it to B tier. It's just frankly maybe too much buildup for my personal taste. What's cool though is that we get a bunch of POVs in this book. And I was honestly surprised at some of the characters. We get like a peek inside of their mind and their psyche for a chapter or so. And although we do spend some time with some new characters, the best thing that this book does is advance the characters we know and love, and we get more of a character arc and progression from them. Overall, this book was just leading up to a fast-paced, action-packed, thrilling third book, which I'll talk about later in this video. All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. B tier. This is a mystery thriller book set in a small town in Missouri in 1975, I think. We follow a 13-year-old named Patch because he wears an eye patch, and he becomes a local hero after saving one of his classmates from an abduction. This sets off a chain of events that profoundly affects Patch and his best friend Saint, and really everyone around them. The story unfolds over several decades, kind of like what happens in Tomorrow. And just like that book, it also delves into the themes of friendship, trauma, but like obsession with this one, and also lasting impact of a single moment. I never enjoyed reading this book, not for 1 second, but it also was really hard to put down. It trapped me inside a glass case of emotion. So much trauma, jam-packed into 600 pages, which is really what's gonna hold it back from being A tier. Because when I first put this down, I thought it was like a 4.5 book for me, but since letting it marinate a little bit, I think it's a little bit closer to 4. It was just a little too long for me, and by a little too long, I mean 200 pages too long. If you want a visual of how many pages that is, that's like that many pages, and it's a slow burn type of book, but it also reads kind of fast because it leaves you little breadcrumbs along the way to give you a little bit of insight into this mystery. Like pretty much every single chapter ends on some sort of a little bit of a cliffhanger. And by the way, there's like 400 chapters. A chapter's like 1 or 2 pages in this book. Okay, no, there's only 230 chapters. I was exaggerating. But yeah, it just drops little breadcrumbs every single chapter. I felt like a bunny on a treadmill chasing after a dangling carrot in front of me the entire time because it was like these tiny little cliffhangers. The character development in this is top-notch, in my opinion. It is very rooted in reality, and that's what makes it so scary at times. Throughout the 30 years we spend in this book, we see the characters go through a lot and progress or maybe not progress, and no matter what they do, their lives are forever impacted by the thing that happened when they were really young and other traumas that they endured. They do everything to get closure, these characters, but that closure is elusive. That closure is just like prime Russell Westbrook. Too shifty. But in all seriousness, it's just very painful to read about these characters because they've been through a lot. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you enjoy shows like True Detective or Big Sky comes to mind, or you like just more like serious murder mysteries or thrillers based in reality, you're gonna want to tap in here. Full disclosure, you're gonna have heaps of emotional damage. Every time I think of this book, I get sad, which is why the next book I picked up was Murderbot All Systems Red by Martha Wells. B tier. This is a science fiction book set in a corporate-controlled future where security androids called sec units are leased to research teams who like explore planets, and one sec unit goes rogue. It secretly hacked its own central nervous system and gives itself free will. It names itself Murderbot, but instead of going on like a killing rampage after it gains autonomy, it mostly just wants to Netflix and chill by its lonesome. Not even kidding. No, it just doesn't want to be bothered by people. But the people of the team that it's assigned to are suddenly in danger, and it forces Murderbot to actually communicate and like interact with humans, despite it being the shy, socially awkward introvert. This is the first novella in the Murderbot series, which has recently been adapted to an Apple TV show. Yeah, after reading all the Colors of the Dark, I needed something a little bit lighter, emotionally and physically, because this is only like 160 pages. That again is like 600 plus. Tons of people recommended this to me early on in like my booktube journey as a short, cozy read. This is like the intro for the rest of the series, which I've not like committed to reading yet. But yeah, they're all short. They're all novellas, so you can easily binge them all, just like Murderbot binges The Rise and Fall of Sanctuary Moon. If you know, you know, you know? But even though this book is a short king, this is like mostly slower paced. Again, cozy read, and it does have a little bit of action sprinkled in there. I like the main character, Murderbot. It's relatable in a lot of ways, but especially for the first half of this novella, we don't really get a ton of character development for its human counterparts. I assume and hope that we learn more about them in future installments, but I just found myself not really caring about anyone aside from Murderbot, who doesn't really care about anything. But overall, this is just a nice, quick, enjoyable read that you could crush in one night if you wanted to. I mean, it's a lot to read in one night, but you could crush in 2 nights. Just don't expect this to be like your typical sci-fi with your typical like heroic sci-fi protagonist, because that's not the point. Enjoyable and fun. And if you want to hear more of my thoughts, you can check out this video that I made right after reading. Mistborn, Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson. S tier. This is the final of the 3 books in the Mistborn trilogy, and oh my golly goodness, was it a delicious treat. Yummy. If book 2 was a slow burn, this shit was in fuego. It shoved aside all that strategizing and politicking, because we were done with that. In this book, you see the cards start to play. This is the Chris Moneymaker of the frickin' Mistborn books. This is the Phil Ivey of the frickin' Mistborn books. This is the Phil Hellmuth of the frickin' Mistborn books. This is one of the greatest books my beady little eyes have ever gazed upon. Talk about how to end a book. The dudes who made Game of Thrones, the TV show, I should have read this first. Or they should have hit up Brandon Sanderson, because that's how to frickin' finish a series. Bravo. Johnny Bravo. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. B tier. This is a story of a young Greek named Patroclus who forms a bond with Achilles. Yeah, that Achilles, the Greek mythological hero with a tendon named after him now. We follow these two as they grow up and form an inseparable relationship that turns into quite more. Yeah, this is a love story. This is a retelling of the Iliad, so we ultimately follow them to the battlefields of Troy. So this is definitely a character-driven book, and although there's some action, it felt more like a slice-of-life novel to me. Can a book with Poseidon in it be considered a slice-of-life book? I don't know. But honestly, the core of the book is the relationship between Patroclus and Achilles, and that story feels timeless. It feels real, even though we're in ancient Greece, and we got Greek gods and goddesses lurking around. And one of those goddesses is terrifying, by the way. If you read this, you probably know who I'm talking about. Just absolutely gave me the heebie-jeebies every time they were on the page. This story is told in the first person through Patroclus's point of view. He's an interesting character to follow himself. A little unpredictable and braver than he puts on. And we follow his intimate relationship with Achilles, who is charismatic and essentially a chosen one. I mean, he's like Zion Williamson in high school, but instead of dunking all over people, he's shooting arrows or some shit. And we follow those two's relationship as they grow from preteens to manhood, where it turns from platonic to romantic. And that's not really a spoiler. This book is written how you would imagine people talking in ancient Greece, but it's still pretty easy to read. Overall, really good book with a really super exciting last 100 pages or so. Had a little Sanderland of its own. We'll call it maybe like a Miller Storm, a Miller Quake. I don't know. Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. S tier. In a war-torn world where a caste system determines where you're placed in its society, Tao, a young man from the lower ranks, suffers a traumatic loss that just pisses him off. Unlike the Nobleborn, who are gifted with supernatural abilities and magical strength, Tao has no special powers. Zilch. All he has is relentless determination and an insatiable hunger for revenge. What to expect? Crazy intense and gory battle, a sick magic system, and an African-inspired setting that is pretty unique to the fantasy space from what I hear. This is about as fast-paced can get. Your blood pressure rises just cracking this thing open. If you want to read the equivalent of drinking a C4 pre-workout, pick this up. The author of the book describes it as a Bronze Age John Wick. If you don't know what the Bronze Age is, I didn't really know. It just kind of means an old, like really old. So if you like John Wick in a really old timeline, or if you like the movies 300 or Gladiator, but with magic, that has like an underworld elements to it, this is up your alley, my friend. I enjoyed reading Tao's POV because this is a revenge story and he will stop at nothing to seek revenge. And Tao will work 24/7. Actually, he'll work like 28/7 to make that revenge occur. I was trying to do the Cardi B thing. I don't know, just forget it. The magic in this is almost scary. And I personally think it's like a great fantasy book for horror readers to get into. There's a lot of sword fighting, magic fighting, there's gore, and there's dragons. This is also the first book in a trilogy. The second is out, and I hear it's just as good as this one. Definitely be a 2026 read. If you want to see what I'm trying to read in 2026, what's on my TBR, check out this video. Dungeon Crawler Carl, A tier. After Earth is destroyed and humanity is forced into a deadly alien-run game show, Carl and his sassy cat, Princess Donut, have to fight their way through endless dungeon levels filled with monsters, traps, and bizarre challenges. Honestly, that wild description just barely scratches the surface of everything going on in this book. Like how it is considered a lit RPG book. It's in that genre, meaning our main character's reality is like a video game. He has a health bar, he can see his enemies on a virtual map, but his goal isn't just to survive this reality slash game show run by unknown aliens. It's also to go viral. So like, don't die, but also be Jake Shane while not dying. Good luck. Long story short, this book was a certified Blastoise. I was smirking the whole time. And the audiobook is phenomenal as well. It is silly, wacky, snarky, absurdist. It has like this odd couple buddy comedy vibe to it, but it's also action-packed with fight scenes and boss battles. And also does a good job of explaining all like the video game aspects of everything without it being boring or too nerdy or in the weeds. This is a super duper fun read, and there is a plethora of other books in the series, which I will get to in a bit. Scythe by Neil Shusterman, B tier. In a future where disease, war, and death have been eradicated, scythes are the only people who are allowed to glean, aka permanently end lives to keep the population in balance. 2 teens are chosen to apprentice under a scythe, and they are thrown into this world of politics and are faced with incredibly difficult decisions and choices. This is a dystopian sci-fi. I said it once, I'll say it again. It is a dystopian sci-fi, if you will. And it is a young adult book, actually, but it gets pretty dark. But it is written kind of like a young adult book, so it's at times for me it was a little bit corny. But anyways, these scythes are like Grim Reapers. I mean, look at them. And they go about their business of essentially killing people as like this solemn duty that they are morally obligated to do. They're like Nikola Jokic with winning NBA MVP awards. But of course, there are bad eggs in the scythedom, which makes this really interesting concept even more interesting. Overall, I just felt like more could have been done or explained. I didn't love the first half of the book. It felt sloggy, but the second half was nuts. It was certified bonkers. I was close to DNFing this, and I don't really do that very often, and I'm so glad I didn't, because the back half of this book ended with a bang that really saved it. This is also book 1 in a trilogy that a lot of people like and recommend. I'm still debating if I want to continue the series, but I just have so many other series I just want to read. Morrie. Wait for it. Tuesdays with Morrie. Get it? Yeah, did you get what I was doing earlier? By Mitch Albom, A tier. When journalist Mitch Albom reconnects with his former college professor, Morrie Schwartz, who is dying from ALS, their weekly visits turn into life lessons. And throughout their conversations, Mitch learns that the most important things that he thought were in life, does that make sense? He realizes life isn't, he realizes that he was putting the most important things that he thought that were important actually weren't important. I'm doing a terrible job at this. You know what I mean. This book is beautiful. Heartfelt, reads quick and snappy. It's an uplifting and inspiring book, even though it's about a man on his deathbed. I'm sure you've heard about this book or even maybe read it in high school. And if it is the latter, I wouldn't regret giving it a reread. That's what I did. And if it's the former, you should give it a read. Just a regular old read. If it's neither, you should still consider reading it. Jade City by Fonda Lee, B tier. In a city where magical jade grants magical ability to the people who can harness it, rival crime families battle for control of the streets, jade, and loyalty. This gets compared to The Godfather a lot, except fantasy, except epic fantasy, except urban epic fantasy. If you don't know what an urban epic fantasy is, it swaps the forest with magical mythical creatures and fairies that run around with a gritty modern like city. I really enjoyed reading these characters who are mostly a part of a family, and their family operates like a mafia. So we get the POVs of brothers and a sister in this hierarchy of a mob. If you're looking for a ton of action or a ton of magic, this isn't it. At least not yet. This is book 1 of the Greenbone trilogy. This book is a lot of gradual character work and storytelling and world building. That's not to say that there's no action. That's certainly not true. It's just no Rage of Dragons. You kind of swap the non-stop action with non-stop character work. I will absolutely continue to read the series. I already bought book 2 because I hear it is amazing, and I'm a sucker and I get FOMO. This book was like a setup book for the other 2, and I'm ready for a roller coaster of emotion. And this is still very good, by the way. This is still a really solid book. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. D tier. A man and his son struggle to survive their journey through a post-apocalyptic landscape while clinging on to their humanity and their love for one another. I made a whole video about if this book lives up to the hype. You can check it out after you watch this. But spoiler alert, I lean towards no. I understand that the people who value literary expertise of themes and sentence structure and all that might love this. But for me, the way that it was written was jarring. Like, the author doesn't use quotes when the characters talk or apostrophes. There's no chapters either, which, like, okay, maybe like the no chapters things means like the survival is nonstop. There's no breaks in their life, so we don't get a break as a reader. Or maybe I'm grasping at straws. Either way, it's just so slow paced for a lot of it. And it's not to say that nothing happens. It's just like the way it's written, you physically can't even read it quickly, or normally you just have to like physically read it slow. It's a smaller book, but it took me probably as long to read as Jade City did because of how it's written. You almost have to match its pace with how jarring the sentence structure is. And matching that pace, by the way, is matching the pace of a turtle in quicksand. And sure, some crazy stuff happens, some very frightening stuff happens. But overall, it was just so bleak that at no point did I enjoy cracking this thing open. I did not look forward to reading it. It was tough for me. And maybe that was what Cormac McCarthy was going for. Maybe he's a literary genius and I'm a literary Nimrod. It's very likely. But as someone who is trying to maintain their newfound love for reading, this just left me wanting something a bit more entertaining. So my next read was Carl's Doomsday Scenario, Book 2 in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series by Matt Dinneman. B tier. New achievement. You read the second book in the Dungeon Crawler Carl saga. This book kicks right back off where the book 1 left off, and it has all the fun stuff that the first one has, except it's a little bit shorter, and except that it's in a different setting with more characters, more character development, more plot development, new bad guys. But I just felt like it didn't hit as hard for me as the first one. Either way, it was still a delight. This is high-end B tier. Again, B tier is 4 stars. And I'm excited to read book 3 sometime in 2026. Chain Gang All-Stars by Nanakwame Ajabrenya. A tier. In a near future America, incarcerated individuals are given the choice to serve their 25-year plus sentence or to fight to the death in a gladiator style event in like a stadium, fighting against other inmates in the same position. And if they survive 3 years of this constant battling to the death, by the way, they earn their freedom. They can return to society. And all this is televised and sponsored by giant corporations, like we're watching UFC or WWE. So the inmates who are fighting for their lives are treated like superstar athletes to the crowds and to TV. But yeah, these people are just still imprisoned and treated like crap. So yeah, this concept is wild, super unique. And this freaking book had moments where my jaw was through the baseboards of my floor. It had moments that made me like physically cringe, an actual emotional pain. What I really liked about this is how we follow all sorts of different POVs in this. Of course, most of the main characters are the people who are in this like jail system, but we also follow like the fans of this the television show who watch it like it's reality TV. We follow prison guards, we follow activists, we follow a scientist, and more. And we see how far this all stretches. There is definitely some brutal action scenes in this book, but the characters and the concept and the message and the themes are really where this book shines. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. A tier. So this is a more cozy fantasy about 2 people from completely different worlds who become magically intertwined. Yumi and Painter. It's got a little 2000s rom-com vibe to it, but it also has action, magic, sweet world building, and a satisfying plot that one could expect from Brandon Sanderson. This is like a fish out of water story where both of the main characters are fish out of water. It's like smirk funny, it's cute, and it's just a fun ride. Really, really cool. First half of this book is just kind of like vibes, cozy vibes, and the second half things start to happen. We get our tried and true Sanderlanche. The Woman by Kristen Hanna. C tier. This follows a young woman whose life is forever changed by serving as a nurse during the Vietnam War. I think this book should be renamed The Woman, like singular, because we just follow one single POV of Frankie. And I just really wish that we got more than one POV. I liked Frankie's best friends more than I liked Frankie. So it would have been great to get more of them and their experiences instead of following our main character the whole time. But regardless, it was still a very solid read. I don't know the last historical fiction that I read. Maybe I've never read one. So that was really cool to be kind of transported back into history a bit and sort of live in that time. Obviously it's fiction, but still kind of cool to get a picture of how tough it was during and after the war, and then to get all the horrors of the Vietnam War, but from the perspective of the inside walls of a hospital. I just felt like this book was a bit too drawn out and repetitive at times, and there's a lot of trauma. It's like nothing good ever happens. So it was a heavy emotional read, which is why I wanted to start something a bit more lighthearted next. The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, book 1 in the First Law trilogy. S tier. So this is a grim, dark fantasy series featuring a morally gray cast of characters, an infamous barbarian, a selfish nobleman, and a crippled torturer who are drawn together as a war starts brewing and bubbling up like an imperial IPA. So this is a character-driven epic fantasy that subverts traditional hero tropes, mostly with its characters, plot, and writing. AKA that pretty much everything. The writing is fast, intense, dark, gory, but it has this like sly, dark, witty humor. The characters are distinct, flawed, powerful, insecure, and an absolute joy to read. The plot is fine. We're not here for the plot though, especially in this first book. We are here for the characters and for Joe Abercrombie's writing. I read the other 2 books in this series. I finished the series throughout the year, and I've been doing this more in chronological order, but I'm just gonna rank them right now too. Before They Are Hanged, A tier. The Last Argument of Kings, S tier. Yeah, so it goes S-A-S. Stephen A. Smith, San Antonio Spurs. The first book is just kind of like vibing with these characters, and by vibing I mean being horrified by Glocta's every move. The second book has a nice like Lord of the Rings journey vibe to it, with this like unsuspected motley crew of people getting together. But I just personally think I read it too close to the first because it didn't hit the same. Still great though, and probably seen as a better book than the first one in most people's eyes. And the third was an absolute delight to read. These books are all like 550 pages. In this book, the plot comes together a bit, and a lot of the buildup finally comes to fruition. We see some of the wildest fight scenes, crazy magic, political chess moves being completed. And I don't know if I would say it's a satisfying ending, but it's an appropriate one. Again, this series is about the characters, and the character work and the writing style is really second to none. I love this series, and if you want to hear me yap more about it, I made a whole 12-minute video about why I think you should read it if you haven't yet. I put this just a notch below Mistborn in my second favorite completed series of all time, aka of the last 2 years, because I've really only been reading seriously for 2 years. Red Rising's number 1, of course. Billy Summers by Stephen King, C tier. A retiring hitman takes one last job that quickly spirals out of his control. This is a slow burn thriller, and it was my first Stephen King book. Yeah, this is my intro to Stephen King, and in one word, I would say that it was okay. It was meh. It was mid. It was medium. It was average. It was Daniel Tice. It was Daniel Jones on the Giants. I just don't get the hype with this book. I've seen a lot of other booktubers kind of glaze it. So after finishing it, I was like, yo, maybe Stephen King is low-key overrated? I thought that until I read The Life of Chuck by Stephen King. A tier. I'm not going to tell you what this book is about. It's like 100 pages, and you should absolutely read it. And if you do, don't read the introduction like I did, because it spoiled everything. Or maybe read the introduction because I did, and I still loved it. But this is just a totally unique novella that was, in one word, really good. It was of high standard. It was Amen Thompson. It was Desmond Bain. It was fun, interesting, poignant, satisfying, easy to read, but it might take a second to grasp. It's definitely worth sticking your schnoz into it if you're a little bookworm like me. This gave me hope that Stephen King was actually him. The Way of Kings, book 1 of the Stormlight archive by Brandon Sanderson. S tier. This is book 1 of an absolutely epic fantasy series that follows a slave, a warlord, an apprentice, and an assassin in a war-torn world with magical things going on. That's the best way I could really summarize this humongous beast of a book. This is kind of like a trust me bro series here, but I understand it's a little bit harder of a sell considering you could bench press this thing 10 times and get a bigger chest than Bobby Lashley. All I really need to say is while I read this, I just like sat back and was like, oh, so this is what epic fantasy feels like to read. It is just so vast. The world is so vivid. The characters are interesting to follow. They're all in different places and in different situations in life. The magic is sourced from lightning, and we know that there's going to be some ancient beings involved in some way. Just really cool, nerdy stuff. If you want to be in awe reading about Stormlight powered shard plate worn by shard bearers, of course, during battles on Roshar against the Alethi, with miscellaneous spren floating around everywhere, this is the book for you. And although this is an intimidating series to start, don't get me wrong, every book's over 1,000 pages, just know that it is actually really accessible in terms of the writing. Brandon Sanderson's got you. That's all I can say. It's not overly complex. If I can read it, you can too. The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. A tier. A woman takes a job in a wealthy household where nothing is quite as it seems. Ooh. This is a twisty psychological thriller that I read in 2 days. Oh shit, Phil, you read 322 pages in 2 days? Yup. I did listen to some of it. It was a long car ride, but that doesn't change the fact that I've read this in 2 days and I've bragged about it a lot on this channel. It does mean something because I don't read books in 2 days. It takes me like 2-3 weeks to finish a book, but this is written in such a fast-paced, addicting way that, again, drops little breadcrumbs on every chapter. This is like a popcorn book. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I feel like it tells you what you need to know. It's like a fun, casual, mysterious, kind of campy read that I just really enjoyed. Before I get into the next book, I do want to tell you about something. If you made it this far in the video, I don't know if you've seen the product placement here, but yeah, that's a hat that says Got Books, and it has a dude shooting a book like he is Orlando Magic Hito Turgaloo. I just did a small order of like 50 of these and they sold out, which is nuts. By popular demand, I sound like a hardo saying that. I am restocking them, but it will take a bit to produce and to ship out to you, so expect like a 3-week ETA if you do want to order them. I will link them on this video right here somewhere. Maybe it will be right here, the link. Who knows, who's to say? I'll also put the link in the description, and that's all I will say about this, okay? I don't want to bang you over the head with these Got Books hats. I'm gonna be cool and casual about these, you know? I just would hate to be like just pushing these hats on you guys. I don't want to be annoying about it, you know? Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby. B tier. A former getaway driver is pulled back into the criminal underworld that he tried so desperately to escape as an honest, hard-working man. So this book actually reminded me of how I felt about Billy Summers at first. It's like a gritty book, almost like a modern noir. The main character doesn't really want to do these crimes. They're pulled back into this world begrudgingly. But in my opinion, this did like that contemporary crime thriller genre better than Billy Summers. It starts off a bit slowish for the first third or half, but it ends with a bang. Captain Underpants by Dave Pilkey. I forgot I read these, and I'm not going to count them as books that I read, but I was looking through my books and remembered that I actually made a whole video about reading these. What a blast from the past, guys. Yeah, I got the new versions, even though I had 1 or 2 of the old ones. Super fun, and brought me back to like my childhood. Very nostalgic. The Invisible Life of Addie Larue by V.E. Schwab. D tier. A woman named Addie makes a deal that will let her live forever, but ensures that she'll be forgotten by every single person she ever meets. So, very cool premise, but the story was way too repetitive. It went from like the 1700s to modern day, and kind of the same stuff just keeps happening to the main character. It was also like 150 pages too long, and it was too slow, and I didn't like a single one of the characters. I thought the writing was good, but was a slog for me to get through for sure. Really nice looking book though, right? Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. A tier. A gifted child is sent to battle school where he is trained through increasingly intense games to prepare humanity for a alien threat. The buggers are coming. This is a sci-fi classic that lived up to the hype. I was actually super surprised where the story went, how dark it was at times, the manner of which it was written. I made a whole spoiler reading vlog / summary that you can watch. Probably it's an hour long. I don't know what I was doing, but if you really like this book, maybe you'll enjoy it. Long story short, I went in with no expectations at all, and it was the sneaky banger I needed after The Invisible Life of Addie. A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen L. Peck. B tier. A man dies and finds himself in a version of hell where he needs to find the book containing the story of his life inside of a never-ending library. And however difficult that might sound, multiply that difficulty by 1,000,000,000, and that's how difficult it actually is. It's like the equivalent of playing Through the Fire and Flames on Guitar Hero at expert level. This is a 100-page novella that you can read in a couple of hours. Really big words, super easy to read. I won't give anything away, but it's also like somewhat humorous too at times, but also kind of depressing, eerie, and trickles in a fair amount of existential dread for good measure. Very good option to read in between some of bigger fantasy sci-fi books to change up the genre. The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. B tier. B for Beagle. This is a classic fantasy book where a lone unicorn sets out to discover what happened to the rest of her unicorn brethren. She meets some interesting people and interesting creatures along the way. This book is straight up whimsical. It has magicians, enchanted castles, a forest, one of those kind of fantasy books. It feels like a fairy tale for adults, or probably for any age, but adults can read it. It's written poetically, flowery, which took me a bit to get the hang of. Once I did, it was really easy to read. It feels melancholy at first, and then it gets humorous with the introduction of a character whose name rhymes with Kendrick. It's Schmendrick. That's his name. I can't say that guy's name with a straight face. He reminds me of the Waluigi version of Kendrick Lamar. Honestly, just a beautiful book that took me by surprise at how I was rifling through the pages by the end of it. The 5-Star Weekend by Ellen Hildebrand. C tier. 5 friends with complicated histories gather for an unforgettable weekend on the island of Nantucket. Ack, baby. The girls are ack. I bought this when I was on Nantucket, and I read it there because the author sets all of her books there. She's like a Nantucket legend. This is a vibes book. A book that reminded me of watching Sex and the City. It name drops places on Nantucket all the time, so if you've been there, it's kind of fun. It's a beach read that I really enjoyed when I was on a beach. When I left after the few days and went home, it got considerably less fun to read in my apartment. But overall, it was an enjoyable light read that was out of my comfort zone. Pet Cemetery by Stephen King. S tier. This is a horror about a family that moves to a new home in rural Maine, discovering a sinister, ancient burial ground behind their property. Okay, so I couldn't go around having Billy Summers and The Life of Chuck being the only Stephen King books I read, because that's the most random 1-2 punch ever. I wanted to read a horror during spooky season in October, and I figured who better than the king of horror, Steven. It was between this and Salem's Lot, and I heard one of them was a heavy, slow burn that is dark and terrifying on an emotion level and is filled with themes of grief, and that the other one was a fun, fast-paced horror about vampires. I'm not a horror guy, so out of the two, I wanted to read the fun, fast-paced book about vampires, so I bought this. Except that this isn't the fun, fast-paced book about vampires. Pet Cemetery is the grief-filled, heavy, slow burn book, and it was great. No, it was really good. I really enjoyed every second of it. Even though it was slowish, it was gripping. It was a certified page turner because I wanted to know more about the mystery and what our main character was gonna do. This book made me realize why Stephen King is Stephen King, and maybe next year I'll read that vampire book. A Drop of Corruption, an Anna and Din mystery by Robert Jackson Bennett. S tier. This is a modern day Holmes and Watson type mystery, except fantasy. Holmes and Watson, except fantasy. We get an eccentric investigator and her augmented assistant who are called to the edge of their empire to solve an impossible disappearance that quickly escalates. This is actually book 2 of the Anna and Din series. I forget how to say it. Although I feel like you could read both of the books as standalones. Would be a weird move to read this book first, but you probably could. You could probably just read this book and be fine, even though it's a book too. I'm a fan of the Knives Out movies. A lot of us are. And this book feels like those in the tone and funness, sometimes lightheartedness, except it has magic and fantasy stuff. The main character, the investigator Anna, is one of my favorite characters to read because she is so smart, quirky, and unfiltered. She's got a body mouth. That one. I was a little worried at first that this one investigation would hold my interest for this, kind of low-key chunker of a book, but oh boy does it evolve and capture you like a Venus flytrap. I felt like the writing and everything in this leveled up from the first novel. But this series is new and amazing, and I will be buying any book in it that comes out in the near or distant future. If you haven't heard about the Anna and Din series, the first one is called The Tainted Cup, and this is your sign to get reading. Beartown by Frederick Bachman. A tier. A small town's identity revolves around its high school hockey team until a single event forces everyone to choose sides. On the surface, this book is about a town that is obsessed with hockey, but it's actually a heart-wrenching view on human nature, pros and cons of loyalty, the inner workings of a tight-knit community, and yeah, all the good and bad that comes from those things. This is a really hard read at times, but a really good read. The writing is phenomenal and includes some absolute bars. Like, Frederick Bachman does this thing where he'll be like, the two reunited childhood friends hugged 20 years later as adults and said, let's get a beer sometime. And they both wanted to, but they both knew they never would. And I'd be like, dang, that's true and sad. Yeah, he does a great job at putting a microscope on these little moments that play a part in this much bigger violent act. I'm keeping things intentionally vague here for spoilers. I'm not like a huge contemporary fiction guy in terms of like what I enjoy to read, but this book is great and can be read as a standalone, even though there's 2 other books in the series, if you want to dive back into the ice rink of Beartown. All right, that is everything. So this is my final 33 books, tier ranked. Feel pretty good about this at this juncture. For comparison, here is my 2024 reading ratings. As you can see, Red Rising pretty much took over my life in all the best ways. But yeah, 2 really amazing reading years. Thank you for following along. If you're new here, welcome. And if you've been here for a while, nice to see you again. Wasn't intending this account to be a booktube account. You guys might know I am a full-time content creator. I do mostly short form content. This YouTube channel was this kind of fun side channel where I talked about clothes for short guys, and I figured I would adapt it to be about just anything that I enjoyed. And so I made one video about how to get into reading like I had done the previous year, and then I made the video of the tier ranking every book from 2024. I sat down, I filmed the intro, and my parents called me and told me that my grandfather had passed. So it was incredibly difficult, and obviously stopped filming. I sat back down a few days later and filmed the rest of it, edited it, put it out a week or so later, and out of nowhere it just hit the algorithm, and now it has like 500,000 plus views today and is the reason why most people are subscribed. And to me, it feels like a blessing from my grandfather. This fun side channel has now become more than that, and reading has changed my life. I'm incredibly grateful to you guys for subscribing. Not to get too sappy here. Never expected to be a booktuber, but I'm happy to be here and yap about books in my pea-brained way. Lots of exciting things to come in 2026, I hope. I mean, I'm just gonna keep kind of doing what we're doing here. Let me know if there's any kind of video you want to see, but I do have some fun stuff in the works that I've talked about in previous videos. Anyway, that's it. Deuce.